then what ended up happening was we did 70 deals in our first 6 months, wholesale deals, 70. And it was me. I would go to my friends. I went to my friends and I was like, hey guys, got this pretty cool thing where I've got the connections at the hedge fund. You go and get houses under contract at on Zillow, and then I'll give you ready? 50%. And so
No.
Yep, that's right, Ryan. That's right. That is 100% right.
Today with me on the podcast, I had Mr. Devin Robinson. Devin is out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And man, what an incredible, impressive individual from his childhood upbringing and his story to becoming a real estate investor, all the way to now raising private capital. And his story of growing up in LA in a gang and overcoming all of that, moving across the country at a young age, starting and failing, starting multiple businesses, crashing and burning in some, succeeding in others, ultimately leading to the installment method, which is a game-changing way of doing real estate that not many people know about right now, but it's about to become a lot more popular. With politicians and states making it illegal to wholesale, Devin has your workaround. This is going to blow your mind, so you might need to listen to it a few times to really understand it, but please reach out to him for that. And then finally, Devin talks about just his why and how providing affordable housing and how being a foster parent of 3 himself, plus having a mission of providing affordable housing all across the U.S., is part of his why and why he created his fund. You won't want to miss it. Without further ado, Mr. Devin Robinson. Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast with your host, Ryan Weimer. Today, we've got Devin with us. How's it going, Devin?
Hey, fantastic, man. If I were any better, my name would be Ryan Weimer.
Yeah? Dude, I am so excited to talk to you, and I'm really excited for the listeners too. We're going to talk about installment method, your story, all the different businesses that you've been in. We got a lot to unpack, so I hope everybody is ready for this episode. The background that Devin has and the experience that Devin has, I don't think I've ever had a guest on the podcast that has this kind of just life experience. And so that's why I'm so excited to talk to him and so excited for the listeners today. So Devin, on this podcast, we always start with the best stuff first. We're going to get right into it. What was your biggest failure?
So man, a biggest failure is really hard for me. I actually am a really, really big believer and proponent in failing faster and failing further. So I actually try to fail as often as I can. Because like I'm always trying to push the limits of what I like believe is possible. And this is one of the great things that I think, man, this is one of the fantastic things that I think that I love the most about groups like Collective Genius, which is where we met, is because I have this quote and it's saying that like when I'm in those circles and when I'm in these, because like I'm also in some fund masterminds, like bro, these fund masterminds, I'm like, wait a second, did you say you have 10,000 doors? Okay, all right. Same, but but I'll be in these masterminds, and what happens is, the ceiling to what I believe and dream is possible is raised, and then the floor of my limiting beliefs are raised, because we all have limiting beliefs. We all sit there and we're like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can get. But like, I remember being in CG and hearing like people were like, oh, I own 20 doors, and I'm like, whoa. And then they're like, I own 50 and 100, and I'm like, 100 doors. And then like I hear somebody in Premiere go, I own 2,500. And I'm like 2,500, and then I'm sitting next to somebody in my fund mastermind, and they're like, I own 10,000, and I'm like, what? So then what happens is then I go, oh, of course, 2,000, like of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, because now the floor to my limiting beliefs is raised, but the ceiling to what I believe is even possible continues to raise. So I fail as often as I can, because then it continues, because like I see so many people doing things that I didn't even think were possible, that I'm trying to achieve that. And I fail at a lot of things. Biggest failure? Oh, I would say like my biggest failures have come from businesses. Like I have crashed and burned businesses. Like, yes, I'll be the like chief of sinners here, be the first to admit it. Crashed and burned businesses. And so I had a really big wedding photography company that like, and I think you may have known this about me, really big wedding photography company. I was actually like one of the top wedding photographers in the world at one point, had photographers all over the country. But then I got into real estate and did not exit that well at all. At all. Not even a little bit exited well. And it crashed and burned. And because of COVID, like events, it's an event. It's a business literally based on accumulated a lot of debt, didn't end well. So like huge failure, massive failure, huge failure. Learned so much from it though. That's gotten me to where I am now, and I'm really thankful for that. So if I would say like one of the biggest failures, that would probably be it.
I love that. So right off the bat, you've started multiple businesses, right? And so the wedding photography was one of them.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the wedding photography. What made you? I assume that there was some kind of failure just in how you exited, but is there any reason you didn't? I assume maybe you sold it to somebody that burned it, or did you try to keep it running while you were doing?
This is a good question. I'm on my 8th business, and so I've done a bunch of different businesses. From like a big marketing company, we did commercials for Kubota and ESPN. To I used to make courses for people, like masterclass level courses, gorgeous courses. I made a course for the World Seafood and World Barbecue Champion, so like really cool courses. And then like the wedding photography was like my big, like that was like the biggest one I built. And it did a lot. Like, I mean, paid myself mid to high 6-figure salary off of it. Like, it was a really good business. And then I got into real estate. And this also goes into a little bit of the journey, right? So I started in wholesaling in a very unorthodox way. You know, was on TikTok, as any good millennial is. And it was like, I ran across this guy and he was like, hey, get into real estate with no cash and no credit. And I was like, hey, went to my wife and I was like, babe, you should try this. This seems pretty cool. And she was like, nah, I'm good. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so then and this ties in, but then I started joining like Discords and figuring out exactly what wholesaling was. And then I went to my mom and was like, Mom, I'm trying to do this wholesale thing. And she's like, you know, that's what I do, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, I work for a hedge fund. I'm an acquisitionist for a hedge fund and we work with wholesalers. And I was like, oh, interesting.
No way.
She was one of the like 5 or 6 acquisitionists at Amherst during like 2021 when everybody was shoveling houses to Amherst. And so then she was like, this is what you should do, because this is what I do. I go on Zillow for sell by owner. I make them an offer, and then we do it. And so she goes, do that. Submit the houses to us when you get them. We'll give you like almost like a pre-shop it. So like we know exactly the number that Amherst is going to pay us. And we were above board. She was doing the normal underwriting. We knew the number from Amherst. We would go back to the people and we'd offer them that and we'd make the spread. So then I started this company at the same time while I was still running my wholesaling company. And then we can talk all about this because people ask me, oh, being an entrepreneur, what's it like owning multiple businesses? Do you think that's very viable for people to run multiple businesses? Which I just think it's not at all. I think it's fine when you hear people like Russell Brunson, Mark Cuban, all these people, and even like VC people that run 50 companies or own 50 companies. They're not running day in and day out 50 companies, right?
They're not the operator. Yeah.
They're not the operator. Like, I think it's a terrible idea to be an operator of more than one company at a time. Terrible. And so, but like owning 50, sure. Like, well, yeah, like invest your capital, own a company, bam. And then like once a month, they hit you up and they ask you questions. That's what VCs are. So I was running. So then I started this wholesaling company while still running this, honestly, man, running this high volume, nationwide. I mean, I photographed weddings in 26 different countries. So like worldwide wedding photography company that did not have good SOPs built out, did not have good training and onboarding structure. I had employees, but like kind of were just doing stuff and like there wasn't very clear direction for them. So like really the infrastructure wasn't good at all, but it was a top 1% of 1% wedding photography studio in the country. And then,
wow.
And then I started this wholesaling company, but based off of like a model that actually like is terrible, right? Zillow for sell by owners only to hedge funds and really only to one hedge fund. And so this is in the golden era of wholesaling, like April 2021, when like you could literally get a house under contract and then like toss the contract and somebody would come grab it for above asking price. And so like, or above ARV. And so then what ended up happening was we did 70 deals in our first 6 months, wholesale deals, 70. And it was me. I would go to my friends. I went to my friends and I was like, hey guys, got this pretty cool thing where I've got the connections at the hedge fund. You go and get houses under contract at on Zillow, and then I'll give you ready? 50%. And so
No.
yep, that's right, Ryan. That's right. That is 100% right. So then what happens is I wasn't giving them 50% of net. I was giving them 50% gross. What we'd get these houses under contract on. So then like I joined CG and I realized, holy smokes, very quickly, this is a business. Now I'm starting to invest my time into this. So then like my wedding photography company, I like completely like cold turkey stopped because it just wasn't worth it at that point. Like we were doing sure like in a wedding photography company, I was doing like 150, 160, 180K a month with a wedding photography company, which is fantastic. Good amount of overhead, but then I was like, but this is real estate. And I'm doing 70 deals in 6 months. I'm about to do 1,000 in a year. Like I really thought that we were going to absolutely crush it. And then, as we all know, November 2021 comes, the funds, the rates change, the funds stop buying, and I have no idea because I've never done anything in real estate. I have no idea about market cycles. I have no idea about interest rates. I actually have no idea how to wholesale direct to seller at all. I remember doing PPC and they would send us leads, and I was like, these don't fit our buy box. I'm not even going to call these people. And like, I just had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so then November comes. So we went from 70 deals to 6 months. And then my friends completely abandoning me because I wouldn't pay them 50% anymore, which is just wild. And it was a really, really bad time in my life. And then for the next, and I remember between November and February, we did 4 deals because all the funds stopped, everything changed. And I had to lay off all of my staff. I had to start over. We had to move out of our office. I was sitting there by myself, but I still was in CG. And being in CG was the best thing for me, like I could possibly imagine, because now between February and July, actually like February and September, I literally just put my head down and I built out all of the systems and processes and SOPs. I built an incredible infrastructure foundation for us to be able to build on to where we are now. And so I got into wedding photography and then crashed and burned it, partially because I just was like, this is real estate. Like at the end of the day, like wedding photography is nice. This is generational. This is completely different. And so I don't know if that answers the initial question where you asked, where you were like, what about like how'd that crash and burn? But like that's the story of like why and how I would say it crashed and burned.
Dude, first of all, thank you for being so vulnerable with all that. I think there's so many people listening to this, including myself, that have gone through something similar, especially in the last couple of years with what happened with interest rates. We've never seen in history interest rates double in such a short period of time. So
Crazy.
obviously,
What the heck was going on?
yeah, man, same. So obviously, like you prepare in some ways for like the market to not always be the same thing, but to have it's the rate of change really that screws you, right? And like the rate of change, if it happens too fast and all of a sudden you have to pivot to a completely different business model. And I know we'll probably get into this later, like these states that are saying it's either illegal to wholesale or you have to get a realtor's license to wholesale. Now there's innovations happening that you're a part of and you're leading called installment method that we'll talk about in a bit to get over that. But that's the point, is like when you're operating a business, like you have to be forward looking enough with your cash reserves, number one, and number two, working on the next product, right? Because things are constantly changing. So I love that you shared all that, and there's a million directions we could go. Let's talk about the 50% pay thing though, because I had a struggle doing the exact same thing when I started out, which was paying my employees too much. And I don't think people understand, like, I know employees don't understand this, but they don't have the financials right to know and look at a profit and loss statement. People don't realize most entrepreneurs want to pay their employees the most, the best, right? Like we own businesses because we want to impact people and change their lives. Is there,
if we
yeah,
have a profit.
exactly. So man, it's funny because I had the exact same thing when I joined CG, and I was like, oh, I'm paying my people way too much. And then of course, when you inevitably have that conversation of like, guys, in order to invest in marketing and systems and future things to make this long-term profitable and a self-sustaining business, we have to really adjust and tweak some things. You're going to have some loss there. So Why don't we talk about, Devin, though, like your background and your upbringing and challenges that you had there? Because I think your story is really impressive in the entrepreneur that you've become.
Oh, thanks, Ian. Um, yeah, sorry, you'll hear my daughter in the background.
No, you're good.
So yeah, I grew up. And this actually has a ton to do with like. So I run a real estate fund now, and even the thesis of our fund and what we like our BHAG and our vision and goals and values of the fund and where I want to be and the impact that I want to scale in this world is directly associated with the way that I was raised. Everything that I do now, like the goal and the vision that I have in life, is almost associated to what my upbringing was. So I grew up in LA, single mom, and really thankful for my mom. I joke, 3 job, two kids. That's the real triple double. And so like my mom worked extremely hard to get me where I am today. There is no doubt about it. And I wouldn't be where I am without her. But also we grew up in really hard areas. Like grew up in Inglewood, California, and she worked hard to eventually we moved to Torrance, which is a nicer area. But I grew up around a lot of gangs. I grew up around a lot of drugs. Like the two of my best friends at the time. One right now has life in prison for murder. The other one is in and out of jail, out of rehab. And that was kind of my reality. And not because of my mom not trying to put me in the right areas or not working hard enough. There's a quote, and depends on what you believe. I believe in God, and it says, but the quote is not associated with God. It says the universe equally distributes talent, but doesn't equally distribute opportunity. So like I can go anywhere, right? Like I could go to Africa right now, and there are kids just as they're grown adults just as talented, smart as I am, equally as capable, does not have the same opportunity that I have. And so for us and what we do, our desire is to affect affordable housing, because like I want to create opportunity for people who didn't have opportunity. And like if you really want to get into it, this is actually really interesting, Ryan, is like in the history. Okay, we're really going to get into it because my background and my history affects like the goals and the things I want to do in my life. Ryan, could you guess, and I always ask this, could you guess the percentage of African Americans that now own a home, what the percentage of growth has been from the year 2011 to now? So in the last 14 years, what has been the 13 years? What has been the percentage of growth in home ownership amongst African Americans? What would you think it is?
Man, sadly, I would say like maybe 20%.
Oh, sheesh. 0.4%.
Oh,
so yes. So like,
dude.
Yeah. So the percentage of so like, let's say 200, I don't know, let's say 100 million African Americans in America. And let's say, okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's just say 20 million African Americans in America owned a home in 2011. 20,400,000 African Americans own a home now. So really like you're looking at this almost systemic education and opportunity issue with amongst minorities. Here's also another like blow you away statistic. In the history of America, there have been $84 trillion to come into America through private equity, invested into America through private equity and real estate. $84 trillion. 1.7% of that has gone to minorities and women. Minorities, women, and immigrants. So that means 98.3% of all money, private equity and real estate money, have all gone to white men. And so there's this huge dissonance between the opportunity that minorities, women, men, immigrants have to access of capital and access to education of ownership in America. And so for me, because of the way I grew up in LA around gangs, single mother, I joke, I'm the two worst things you can be in America, Black and Middle Eastern. But like it's a joke. But like I think I'm uniquely postured in the way that I've lived and the things I've gone through to be able to actually affect change. And I strongly believe like, hey man, you can mail your senator all you want, but unless you actually have some sort of influence, you can't really create impact. And so my goal is to create enough influence through starting a fund, through real estate, through whatever, to actually create impact in this world. And it all is predicated, and actually the beginning of it, Yeah. So like the beginning of it all started from how I was, the life that I had in California. And so I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for growing up the way that I did. I'm also very thankful that God decided it's in middle school that I would no longer live in. So it was in like going into my freshman year of high school. I was living with who I thought was my dad at the time, and I got a phone call from my mom who was still in California. I was living with I was actually spending the summer with this guy, and he lived in North Carolina. And the phone call literally was like, "Hey, you're not coming back home. So the luggage you have with you is like that's all you got." And so,
Dude,
yeah,
as like a 14-year-old?
yeah, yeah, around that time. So, at 14, and you know what? What's really interesting is my wife and I, we foster children now. We foster and adopt kids. And this is not very similar because like I still was very close to my mom, ended up living with her again in high school. It was just her and I again. And then even then in high school, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. She had the bedroom and I slept in the living room. I slept on a pull-out sofa in the living room my junior and senior years of high school. And so like that was my reality of the situation we were in. And then I worked really, really hard. I've worked in all types of jobs. And I think, I don't know how many people know this. I actually worked at Hooters at one point as a busboy, but worked really hard, and then went and played baseball in college for a couple years. And we can talk all about that too, because I ended up quitting, but I learned a lot of lessons in that. But yeah, I guess that's kind of like the upbringing that I have. And again, it's you talked about it a little bit, my upbringing, and then like worked really hard to get to where I am. My mom worked really hard to give me the opportunity that I am, and then like by nature, we've talked about the statistics. By nature, the odds were against me as a Black Middle Eastern man in America to be where I am now. We run a real estate fund and we do this kind of stuff, and so I think it's a testament of the people that we keep around us. Because my life was changed in college, and having just the right people around me in college to get me to where I am here now, and then having the right people that I surround myself with in these masterminds. And so, and really, that has helped to propel me to where I am now, to where I never thought I would ever be, but only because of the opportunity. So, like, it's funny because you have this idea of luck. And I think, and we've heard this, luck is when opportunity and preparation meet, right? At the crossroads of opportunity and preparation is luck. And so I just think that I've gotten lucky a lot because I've been prepared to be in the right rooms with the right people. And not only that, I've been prepared to take like immediate and massive action on those things. I'm reading this book called Relentless right now. Fantastic book. It's about the guy who is the personal trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe, Dwayne Wade, right? And so, and he talks about this idea of having a cooler, a closer, and a cleaner. Those are like the 3 main categories of people. A cleaner is like Michael Jordan, Kobe, Mark Cuban, cleaners, right? They're guys that you don't have to motivate. They're guys that are going to get up and they're going to make it happen. They're going to take massive action, and they don't really care what happens. They have a goal, and they're going to hit that goal. They don't need a whole lot of people to help them to get that goal, but they're going to hit that goal. And then you've got the closers. Closers are going to hit the shot if you give them the opportunity to hit the shot. And then they're going to want some kind of accolades. They're going to hit the shot and they're going to be like, thanks for this. And then you have the coolers, and the coolers are going to be like, you tell me what to do and I'm going to go make it happen. And so like, this is not like a boast or anything like that, but our team literally would just be like, all right, Kobe, like go get it done. And so like that's how I've lived my life. And so I'll get in these masterminds and I'm like, oh, I can do that, Kobe. Like I'm about to fool Kobe, you know. And so it's I think it's just really is like, what do you do with the opportunities you've been given? Like how do you prepare to be in the right position to take full advantage of the opportunities when they come along? And I think my life has prepared me for that, the grit that comes along with that, the grind that's coming along in my life. But also, if I didn't take massive action when the opportunities arise, then I wouldn't be where I am either. And so, yeah, it was a lot, bro. I just shared a whole lot with you, a whole lot with you. Holy smoke!
That's an incredible, not only story, but an incredible and powerful why, right? And what's so admirable about that is you've used all of these situations in your life that a lot of people, quite honestly, would have a victim mindset towards. You did the complete opposite. You flipped that on its head. And you're like, how can I use these experiences to have the kind of impact that I want? And that is just, it's just a rare thing, but it's powerful beyond measure. Like, you're this 14-year-old kid and you find out, okay, I'm moving. What was it about you? Or because most people in that situation, I would guess statistically, they might move across the country, but maybe they surround themselves with a similar crowd because it's all that they've known their whole life. Like, what was it when you made the move that maybe you got into a better crowd? I know you mentioned getting in to the baseball team in college, and that it helped propel you, but like, what was it you think that got you into maybe a better situation instead of just joining the same crowd?
Yeah, so my crazy story. I thought this one guy was my dad all my life. Turned out he wasn't my dad, but that's who I stayed with. And it was him, and I had a stepmom with him there, and they were very good people, amazing people, and they loved me dearly, and they tried to teach me really good lessons and a really good work ethic. And I would say, like, a lot of it was them. A lot of them that was the reason why that I was forced to move out there at the time, because, like, I mean, for real, I failed most of my classes in middle school. I was doing drugs. I was drinking. I was running with gangs in middle school, and so I was just going along the wrong path. And so to move all the way out to North Carolina, where, like, I would be like, yo, why are these people waving at me? Random people in their cars just waving when they drove by. And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, don't wave at me.
Yeah.
And so it's like a completely different, I mean, couldn't be more different culture from LA to, like, Raleigh, North Carolina. Like, and then eventually the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is an island. Like,
Yeah.
what? And so really it ended up being, honestly, the guy forced me to play football, and I'd never played football before. I'd played baseball all my life. And I loved football. Football was actually my best sport. I was going to play that in college. I ended up getting hurt and played baseball instead. And so, like, I think it really was just getting into football and finding my community in football, but then, like, with a really good coach that really cared. And eventually so my mom moved back out and I lived with her and no longer lived with that guy, my football coach almost became a father figure in my life. And I would say, like, that was probably one of the biggest impact. He's probably one of the biggest most impactful men in my life. And so I would say, like, that was probably the catalyst that really changed my life, was playing sports and getting into football and, like, actually having a right father figure in my life that I never had I never had a father figure really in my life all growing up, except my grandfather, but he died early in my life. So I would say, yeah, I think it was really, like, my football coach. Crazy.
Man, that's awesome. There's so many parallels with sports and athletics.
There's no doubt.
And successful people, and also not only successful people, but, like, happy people and fulfilled people. Because I think it just teaches you how to deal with failure at a young age, right? And, like, there's something about also getting physically harmed when you fail, like, especially in football, in a contact sport, that teaches you some hard lessons.
That is true.
Yeah.
Those are necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward, let's talk about the fund and starting the fund, because, well, actually, before we get into the fund, you have to pivot, right? And you're talking about this period after doing the Zillow for sale by owner things to hedge funds. And you have this 6-month period where you're, like, nose to the grindstone, just grinding, building up all your processes and everything. And I know you've especially found a niche in foreclosures and specializing in that. Is that really what you hung your hat on when you made that pivot?
Yeah, for sure. So I remember very vividly sitting in the June CG meeting, and this guy named Mike. So I get up, I give my presentation on working with hedge funds, and I was like, yo, won the belt, easy, in the bag. And then this guy named Michael Frankie gets up and he gives this whole presentation on foreclosures, and everybody was like, what? And I was like, what? And then my partner Carl looked at me and he was like, that's it. It's foreclosures. And so he ended up winning the belt. But then, like, and he beat me. I came in second. Now, but I almost equate it, like, because he ended up being the first person to ever give a main stage presentation after winning a belt in like a breakout. And I was like, that's like losing in the first round of the playoffs to the guy that won the Super Bowl. So like,
Yeah.
that's okay. So like, I'll take second to that guy. So but like, so then after that, that was in June, and then I was like, okay. So I literally took his video. I watched his video 50 times, and I created all of the SOPs for his, like, what he said. I just contextualized it to us in our business and created SOPs that were for where we were, and then just took off with it. And so like, he's a big reason for that, and a big attribution, like a big reason why we are for where we are with that. So yeah, I would say like 90% of what we do is foreclosures. And we do it at a fairly high level. We probably are locking in like anywhere between like, yeah, probably around like 4 contracts a week, like 3-4 contracts a week on foreclosures. And with things like the installment method, and I mean, it allows us to have massive spreads. So it's really cool. And so yeah, that's where it started, was foreclosures. But then like, and then so kind of then going into it, what happens with foreclosures is you start running into a lot of issues with having to pay arrears, having to stop auctions, there's like, you just actually, foreclosures are just, to actually be effective in foreclosure, you actually just need a lot more capital than you would if you're just normally wholesaling, or else you lose a ton of opportunity. So then I started working with a lot of private lenders, and then it becomes so cumbersome because I'm like, hey, person's auction's happening, we need to close tomorrow. Oh, you're on vacation? Can you still go to the bank? Like, I know you're on vacation with the kids. Can you go to the bank? Your house is going to get auctioned away. And so it becomes fairly cumbersome. So what I decided to do was go, okay, I'm going to start a fund. I'm going to spend the 40 grand to start a fund that it costs. And then like, but to eliminate that whole issue of needing private lenders, I'm just going to be my own fund, and people invest in me, and then I can use their money however I want. And so that's then what I ended up doing. And so there's a difference between like syndication funds and then what we are, but we can talk.
Dude, I absolutely love that. Before we get into the fund, what is like the tactical, for the listeners, tactical nitty gritty look like, or maybe a couple real life examples of this foreclosure process? Because I've seen Michael present on this as well, and we've talked before about how dialed in your foreclosure process is. What are some things that you can share about that?
Oh, I can share it all, man. I'll share everything. So yeah, well, and it depends on if your state is a non-disclosure state or not. And I mean, once I build out the right team, I will be in every like disclosure state. And once regulations really start coming down, I'll be in every state with the harshest regulations. So I'm very excited about that. I'm not excited because it sucks for a lot of people. I'm excited for our business. And so, so in disclosure states, so what happens is when a house goes into foreclosure, the banks can't handle the amount of foreclosures that are happening in America. So what happens is they actually hand off the foreclosure case to local foreclosure attorneys in that state. And so in North Carolina, well, in all states, they legally have to, these attorneys have to disclose when they get assigned these cases. A lot of them will do it in a newspaper. A lot of them will do it at the count, like just different ways they do it. In North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, other states, they do it on a lot of their websites. You could just Google Brock and Scott, Hutchins Law Firm, Logs Legal Group foreclosures, and they will come up with a list of all of their foreclosures they get, and they legally broadcast when they get them. So like hourly, they're updating those. So then I have a VA come in every single day. They'll go in and they'll go to all the foreclosure attorney websites in our state, in North Carolina and South Carolina. They'll scrape that. They'll put that onto a spreadsheet, and then my team will actually call it. I've got a virtual assistant that calls every single state. So one for each state, and all they do is call all day. Call the same number 100 times. I don't really care, because when you think about it, if you can get them to answer, then you win, because they're not answering their car when they call. They're not answering their credit cards. They're not answering their water. They're not answering anything. So if you get them on the phone, you win. And so then I have my callers call them. And then for every phone number that we verify, my team will actually send a text video to engage with them on a much more personal level, which is really cool. And then after that, then we kind of go through the model. So like, we organize through how much projected equity there is on the house. Houses with much bigger projected equity, we go after harder. We'll door knock. We'll do those kind of things with them, just depending on where we are. And then we've only been doing calling. We're now going to start getting into mailers, sending mailers to those. And then we actually started getting into like 80/20 data. So using 80/20 REI or like Audantic, Investor Machine, like whoever you want to use, but like aggregated, stacked predictive data. But really, we really get most of our deals based off of that model that I just told you.
Dude, that's incredible. Let me throw a couple objections at you.
Please do.
Selfishly, because I think we need, our foreclosure process is getting better, but we're not near as dialed in as you guys are where we should be. If we're in a non-disclosure state, what additional challenges does that do? And also, is that an advantage? I know earlier you were talking about like the more regulations or more red tape, it might actually be an advantage, and lean into that.
So the regulations, and from what I know, regulations doesn't matter if you're going to the county to get your data. So like, depending on what you want. So like when we were doing in Florida, like but Florida, golly, these non-jurisdiction states are tragic. And so, or these jurisdiction states, I can't remember. But we'll have somebody go down to the county to pull that data for us weekly. Instead of daily, they pull it weekly, and then add that to the list for us. So they'd spend the whole entire day there. But that's like still, right? You have to have a process in place to do that, and most wholesalers don't. So even if you have that process in place of somebody being able to go and manually do it, and like seriously though, still a lot of them still do them in newspapers. So really, it just becomes a lot more manual and in person. So like having a college student that you can pay, I don't know, $15 an hour to go to the county on Mondays, or to grab the newspapers or whatever would probably be the best. Because like then after that point, really all we want is the best data, the fastest, right? Like when I go and I get it from the foreclosure attorney's website, I know that batch leads is going to get that same data in 2 weeks. So if I can get it 2 weeks earlier before everybody else, that's what I want. So I'm going to pay if it's a state where they're not putting that stuff on there. And I would say like calling the foreclosure attorneys and asking where they broadcast those at is going to be a really good bit, because like they'll tell you where they broadcast them at. And that would probably
that was going to be my next question. Is we deal with like, you got auction.com, right? Yep. Zillow shows foreclosures. You got the trustee websites, the attorney's websites, and then our title company also sends out a foreclosure report. If I'm in a state and I've got all of these data points, like how do I know which one's first? How do I know where I should go first?
Oh, okay, sweet. So for us, then now this is hard because in a non-disclosure state, you don't really know when they bought it, for how much they bought it for. So that's a really tough thing. So, but you can know the year that they bought it. And so typically like they'll give you the year, but they won't give you the price and all that stuff. So then I would actually just like estimate the year that they bought it. Okay, I know that they bought it 10 years ago. That probably has equity. So I would probably categorize those. And like, I'm just thinking out loud because like I don't deal with this. So like, I'm just trying to be solution oriented with you.
Yeah.
I would think out loud, and I would probably prioritize years of ownership in that case over like, because I really have no idea if somebody bought it 2 years ago, if they put 20% down or if they put 3% down. So I would go years of ownership in that case. But I would have my VA scrape all of that stuff. They'll take that data and they would Google every single house and look at the year that it was bought, and then the ARV on it, and then kind of get a good idea of like, okay, this would be a good one for us to prioritize if we're going to prioritize the data. But typically what we do is like, because in these situations, I mean, I can't tell you, we probably lock in like 4 sub-2 contracts a week. You can sub-2 foreclosures like crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. They don't always end up working out, which is why we don't always close 4 sub-2s a week, because then you got second mortgages that come in and liens and judgments, and then it makes it not doable. But like, I will call all of them anyways, even if they bought it last year, because like we could sub-2 it. So that's just kind of where, if I'm thinking of a solution-oriented approach, I would probably go based off years of ownership. Is that something you've thought of?
Yeah. Well, no. So thank you for that advice. We'll definitely start doing that. I think for most people listening, including myself, like just being naive, you don't know by the time it populates on auction.com, Zillow, batch leads, whatever, it is 2 weeks old. So what you're recommending is county, title company, attorneys, they've got the freshest data. That's where you should start first.
100%. There's no doubt, because like the notice of default is typically filed with the county. So if the notice of default is filed with the county, then like you're going to get it before it even actually gets an auction placed on it. And so a lot of times they'll go, there's a lot of times they find out their house isn't up for auction from us. And so
Yeah.
like, they because like we're one of the first people that know about it, because we get it when the foreclosure attorney gets it. And so they haven't been checking their mail for their notices of default. They haven't been checking the mail or answering it when the bank, or opening their mail from the bank. So when a foreclosure attorney gets it, that means there's an auction set. Now this is what I love about North Carolina. It's a redemption state. So there's 5 states in the country that have redemption periods. There's a couple more. I actually put together a list and I can't remember it, but I actually have the list. But North Carolina is a state where it's not a hammer state. Hammer state is like when the auction happens and the house is sold, house is gone forever. North Carolina, when the auction happens and the gavel bangs, the seller actually has 10 more days after that to either pay off in full to keep the house or to sell it. Now, here's what's really crazy. So today's the 20th. Let's say an auction happened today on the 20th. I then, like, let's say I get, so Ryan, your house is in foreclosure, auction went to sale on the 20th. We actually have 2 of these right now. And, and they're bangers. 2 of them right now. Auction happened. And then they come to us and go, oh my gosh, my house got auctioned. What can I do? Yo, we have a banger where the lady's house got auctioned. It's so sad. And she's like, do I need to sign? Like, how soon do I need to sign the contract? And we're like, well, you really only have like 9 days. So today, she goes, okay, my husband doesn't know yet. Yo, her husband doesn't know that the house got auctioned.
Oh.
But what we can do, so what we're able to do then is today's the 20th, house got auctioned on the 20th. I can then go on the 30th, 10 days. I can place a bid that outbids the previous bid, and it extends the timeline 10 more days for us. And then I actually have gone to where I'm doing this right now, where I bid on it, and then we're trying to close with the seller and clear title. So then I just go, if like I'm at the top where nobody else is bidding against me, I'll take one of my LLCs and bid against my other LLC. And I'll just keep bidding to extend that time 10 more days until we close. And then all the money that I put down at the county, they actually refund to me. So it's crazy what you can do. And you can't do that in every state. So I love North Carolina for that.
Yeah, that's rigging the game, man. I love that. And the whole point of us focusing on this topic is you're showing everybody what going super deep in a niche does. Yeah. You would have never known I can have multiple LLCs bid against themselves to extend the timeline in my state. Like, yeah. Who in North Carolina even knows that? I mean,
I don't know many people that don't.
No, exactly. And that is such a, like, how many deals will that net you in your lifetime just because you know that knowledge?
At Offer Now Idaho, we're looking to hire A players to run our organization and help us grow our business. What's your favorite part about working at Offer Now Idaho?
I would say it's the culture. I really enjoy the people that we have here. They want to grow. They want to become better versions of themselves. They're hard charging. We're all pushing each other to be better. We're not 2 different teams competing on the same battlefield. We're one team practicing because we have a goal of helping 1 million people over the next 10 years. That's a big number. We can have an impact on people's lives while we're on that journey. And the work that you might do year 1 or in month 1 is going to have a positive impact on that family for the next decade. And that's huge.
The growth potential that we have, I mean, we could easily 2 or 3x here in the next few years. With what we've built, the type of people that we've attracted, and the type of people that we're going to attract, this thing is headed for the moon, and we have so many vacancies, and we need your help to fill them. Right now, we have a $3,000 referral program. If you know somebody that's looking for a new role, we will pay you $3,000 once that person is hired by us and they hit their 90-day mark. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a new job or looking to change their life, shoot me a DM at RealRyanWeimer on Instagram.
Let's get it.
We have one house that'll make us like one flip, $200,000 on because I outbid myself for like 4 months. I mean, I had $64,000 in the county. So they sent me 2 checks for $32,000 each to each of my 2 LLCs. So yeah, it's wild. And then now we get to, we closed on this banger and we're about to sell it. Crazy.
Dude, I love this. And I think this is a great time too for you to talk about the installment method and how you are utilizing, right? Step one was going really deep in foreclosures and automating a lot of these processes to get deal flow and predictive deal flow. Now creating the fund and exit strategies is where installment method comes into play. For those people that have no idea what installment method is, what is it?
Let's talk about it. So I really like when I talk about the installment method to take it back to the history of it, because then people go, oh, okay, that makes sense. So what the installment method is it started back in the 1800s when, let's say I go to Ryan and I'm like, hey, Ryan, I like your land. I want to buy your land. There's no banks around here, so we have to come up with some sort of agreement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay you $5,000 and we're going to go to the county. We're going to record our agreement and that $5,000. What happens then is now I have real, not just a contract, I have a real equitable ownership, real equitable interest in that property that is actually listed as equitable ownership on the title, because the equitable deposit or the consideration deposit and the installment agreement is filed with the county. They were doing this in the 1800s when there's no banks for loans.
This is not earnest money, right? This is not earnest money.
Not earnest money. This is a non-refundable. Ryan, I don't care if you go and party with that $5,000. It has been given to you and it has been recorded with the county. I have given you $5,000. It doesn't, whatever. It goes towards my purchase price. And then what happens after that is let's say that 5,000, we've agreed on 100,000. When I pay you the final 100,000, then the deed is transferred to me. So I'm listed on there as equitable owner, but the deed is not yet transferred. So different than a sub 2. A sub 2, that deed is transferred. But with this, I'm just listed as equitable owner. So there's a lot less risk here. And I don't have to pay it in full. I'm not paying off the underlying mortgage. I'm not even paying off liens and judgments. I'm literally just paying you $5,000 equitable ownership deposit on this property. And so then what ended up happening was they did these for years, and then they got really popular again in the 60s and 70s when redlining became a thing and minorities couldn't get loans. They couldn't apply at conventional banks because they were racist. And so then what happened was these minorities would go to these non-minorities that owned houses, and they'd say, hey, I'd like your house. I want to buy it. I can't get this loan. Would you want to do an installment contract with me? And this is where you get like the contract for deed, land contract, very similar, somewhat interchangeable. So then what ended up happening is now, because of the history of this, there's all sorts of case law. There's all sorts of IRS tax code in favor of buyers in installment contracts. And then what then happened is in the 60s and 70s during the redlining, these sellers would actually become fairly predatory. And if a buyer would miss one payment, they would immediately foreclose on them. And so then there's a ton of regulations started coming out protecting buyers. So in Texas, you can't do a contract for deed because of the protection of the buyer on these, not because of sellers, but actually buyers. So in most states, when I do an installment contract, I'm more protected than the seller is. And which is crazy because that's not the case in any other transaction type unless you actually buy it outright. And so in Texas, you can do installment contracts for up to 6 months. So just for clarification there. But so then now that's what we do now. They were doing them again in the 90s, and then all of a sudden nobody was doing them again. And so really, I have to educate a lot of title companies on this because unless these attorneys were doing this before the 90s, they have no idea what installment contracts are. Yeah. So then what happens is now, like if I'm going to pitch this to you, this is what's crazy, Ryan. This is what absolutely changes the game. It's not like contractual interest or whatever that most of these states are kind of banning with wholesaling. I actually legally, case law, IRS code, everything, am an actual owner on the title because I've placed down an actual consideration, non-refundable equitable deposit on this property, and I'm listed on the title, recorded with the county as an equitable owner, which is way better than a memorandum or a notice of interest because like I have to sign on everything. Heck, the seller can't even take out debt without me signing off on it now. So it's fantastic because I'm more protected than any other method that there is. So now, Ryan, when we talk about the tactical of it. So let's get like super practical. Let's say I'm talking to you and you're a seller, and we do this all the time with foreclosures. Let's say you're like, I want 200,000 for my house. Your house is worth 280, 300. And my wholesale would be, man, my cash offer, Ryan, is going to be at around like 165,000. But I know you really want that 200. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to go check with my underwriters in the back and see if you qualify. You may not qualify for our installment program. But if we do, I may be able to get you that 200,000 that you're wanting. And would it be helpful for you too if I gave you $500 in the next week? And you're probably like, yeah, it'd be helpful for you. And so what then ends up happening is we do an initial closing. So this is where wholesalers now become investors, right? Wholesaling is a sales and marketing company. You become an investor now because I am putting down a non-refundable equitable deposit to this person for $500, and I'm doing an initial closing. So I got to pay closing costs to do this. But here's the benefit of this. Within the first 7 days of getting my contract, I clear title and I do my due diligence. We have a closing where I say, Ryan, it's Monday. I can probably close on Friday and give you your $500. You'd like that? Yes, you would like that. What happens, Ryan, this is freaking awesome. We go to our closing, you get your $500, and at that closing, you sign the deed over to me. Okay, so what's recorded at the county is our installment contract is then recorded at the county. The title company or your attorney, if it's an attorney state, holds that deed in escrow. So now that deed has been signed away and I am listed on that title as an equitable owner, I then can go and do whatever I want with that property. I can wholesale it. I can put it on the MLS. And now because I'm the owner, Ryan, the seller never has to sign a document to put it on the MLS. So the seller doesn't ever sign anything to put on the MLS. I actually do this. I do flips out of this because I'm not worried about them selling it out from under me. They can't. I have to sign off on it if they try to sell it. So I could do flips. And here's the kicker. Since they've already signed off on that deed, they never show up again to sign another paper after that 7 days, which like completely eliminates me having to go, hey, I sold the property. Fantastic. You're going to see that I made $80,000 on it.
Yeah.
When you go to sign, please sign. Please sign. And so
Yeah.
like, I don't have to worry about that. They've already signed the deed. They never show up ever again. Maybe they show up to get their check from the title company. I don't know. But they never show up to sign another document. And so it's fantastic.
And when you're doing this, do you have to, like with a foreclosure, do you have to catch up arrears on that first?
So you don't have to. It depends, right? So like if we're in our redemption period, I can keep upsetting it and never have to catch up arrears because when the house sells, the sale pays off the underlying note. So what happens is the seller sees, and this is cool because like the seller is most excited to get their money in that first week. They're going to get their 500. Of course, they're going to show up to sign. But like if they have to wait 30 to 45 days, they might back out. They're shopping you around, but they're going to sign in that first 7 days. And what they're signing is a settlement statement that says how much they're going to make. We agreed on that 200. You're going to make that 200. And what shows up on that settlement statement is the underlying mortgage. Let's say the underlying mortgage is 150,000 and then 50,000 to Ryan. And that's what the settlement statement says. So when the HUD closes on the BC side, the payoff of that settlement statement says the underlying mortgage and the 50,000 to Ryan. And so that's the payoff amount for the BC closing. And so, shoot, what was your question?
No, it was, I just think this is going to blow people's minds because I remember hearing about this the first time and I'm like, what in the world is going on here? So the real magic here, right, is multiple things. Number one, the seller never sees how much money you make, which can blow up your deal, right? Like if you're doing innovation.
And if you're doing a buyer that's like, I don't like huge assignment fees, I'm selling them the property as the seller, not as an assignment. So I'm actually literally, they give me an offer to purchase contract, not an assignment contract.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 100%. And not only that, you can refinance the property too, right? Like if you're trying to keep it as a rental.
So, yeah. So what happens is if I'm keeping this as a rental, this is where I go, hey, meet as many loan brokers. I'm blanking on the names right now, but meet as many loan people that you can that then can help to find you the right lenders that will refinance you. Because what you want to look for is their terms on contract for deed. A lot of them have refinance terms on contract for deed. Some of them are a year, some of them are 6 months. I had a guy, he found us one who said they will do, Ryan, they will do a no seasoning period cash out refinance, which is crazy.
What?
Yes, but he's very, very specific. So like, I'm like, hey, I got this deal. And he's like, no, not that one. And I'm like, come on, bro. And so, but like, you want to find, like, so then you want to find these mortgage brokers. That's what it is. Have a mortgage broker find you as many people as possible and see what their terms are for contract for deed refinances and like what their stipulations are for that. Because some of them are like a year. Some of them are like 6 months. So that's what you want to look for.
Yeah, I think guys, this is I mean, as we're talking about this, I can imagine everybody's mind being blown. But the reason there's so much benefit to doing this, especially on your bigger deals, like I can tell you guys from experience, whenever we get a property under contract and we want to do a novation and we want to get it on the MLS to maximize our offer because we're getting the most eyeballs on the MLS, our cash buyers list is deep, but the MLS almost always outperforms it even with agent fees. So this is a way for you to be able to list the property and not have to worry at the end, is the seller going to sign the closing paperwork when they see that I made $100,000 on this? Yep, like exactly. You're avoiding that blow up scenario entirely through this. And not only that, it gives you so many more exit strategies, right? Like you can flip properties that you probably otherwise wouldn't have touched. And it allows you to not have to raise all the money up front and all the costs associated with that.
Really, like you don't have to pay holding costs. You don't have to pay origination points. You don't have to do any of that stuff, which is huge. And it keeps your profit margins really high. Because like, here's another thing on top of what you're saying, like imagine with the refinance, right? When you think about this, I have equitable ownership and I maybe paid a $500. I made a $500 equitable down payment. I paid $3,000 to close, and then I refinance on a property. Like I refinanced on a property without any money out of pocket. That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And you can get paid to own real estate without having to raise any of the money up front or qualify for a conventional loan like they do in the Burr method, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Man, so this sounds too good to be true, Devin. I mean, like, why in the world are more people not doing this? Like, now this just sounds like too good to be true. What?
Yeah. So here's, I wonder if I'll just shoot you straight. I'm always really real with this. So what ended up happening, and this is how I found out about this. There are people there's an attorney down in South Carolina, which is literally the most, I think right now it's the harshest rules in all of the country for wholesalers, and they're actually about to make it harsher. So there's an attorney, his name is Gary Pickering. He is one of the 9 real estate commissioners in South Carolina. We weren't talking. I met these guys in Collective Genius, and they work with him, and they were telling me that, hey, we work with this guy, Gary. We came up with this course for the installment method, and this is what it is. And I was like, yo, that changes everything. Because they told me that Gary, one day, it was completely legal to wholesale. Gary goes into this meeting. In 30 minutes, they hear this case about this wholesaler completely screwing this lady over. And in 30 minutes, they decided that it was completely illegal to wholesale in the state of South Carolina. So in 30 minutes, what that means is the lives of hundreds of wholesalers changed. The way they feed their family, the way they feed their employees' family, completely changed. And then now they're getting cease and desist with $20,000 fines per assignment. And so like that all changed in a span of 30 minutes. And I thought, oh my gosh, 1, this changes everything because like I need to figure this out. But 2, this also eliminates most of my competition in South Carolina. So this guy, Gary Pickering, which is one of the 9 commissioners that voted to make this happen, came up with this course called the installment method. and it now has people who are like, has nationwide lenders, nationwide title companies. We have title companies in every state. So put together this course to be able to do that. Now, what I would tell you is the reason why everybody is not doing this, and I don't think it is, you can't patent pen a process. So this process, anybody can do. Anybody, go use a land contract. Go use a contract for deed. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to work. But like, it's just like novations. You can go use a novation contract, but it's kind of difficult to do if you actually don't have a lot of help doing it. And if your title companies have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so which is common.
Yeah, which is very common. So essentially, it's a product that they sell. Gary and these people sell. And I am like the face of it because I've done most of them than anybody. And so like I run the installment method course and stuff like that. And I would say most people don't do it because they don't want to pay for the course, if I'm really honest. That's why like most people aren't doing it. But like, it changed everything for me. It makes me so much money. Like it's gone from the national average of $16,000 per assignment fee, like to $40,000 an assignment fee, like $60,000. I mean,
damn.
We're making 100 often on assignment fees, 60, 70. So like, because we put it on the MLS and we're using the installment method and we're completely protected. Because let me tell you, Ryan, Virginia, I'll move into Virginia now. Like if they make stricter rules, I'm just going to move into there with the installment method. And like there's no wholesalers. What that means is now all these buyers are looking for deals and my buyers list becomes exponentially easier to build because I'm the only one actually able to wholesale anything to them because I have equitable ownership. And so I'm like, okay, South Carolina, I'm just about to triple down on South Carolina. I'm gonna buy all the data in the whole state because like there's not gonna be any more wholesalers in South Carolina. So like it's worth it for me to buy that course and get into it. And I would say like that's why people aren't doing it because one, they don't really know about it yet, which we're trying to get the word out, and then people just don't want to buy it. But like I'm not trying to pitch it on here. I'm trying to give it to you all the way. Like I'm trying to tell you exactly what to go and do.
I coach people all the time and have people that approach me for coaching. And it's always the individuals that have a scarcity mindset about like, they're thinking about what it's going to cost them today instead of what it's going to cost them the rest of their life or even in the next year. Like, think about this, guys. If you just do one deal with this, it pays for itself. And if you plan on doing more than one deal, which I hope you do, because if you're listening to this, then you want financial freedom and want wealth and impact and all the things that come with it. Like, I mean, this is costing you millions of dollars to not have. That is true. That's the reality.
And then also like how much easier, like my offer is so much better than the normal wholesalers. Cause I go, hey, and what if I gave you $500 now? Is that helpful? No. Okay. What if I paid your mortgage for the next 2 months? Would that be helpful for you? Oh, that would. And then the great thing about that is that's all credited back to you at the closing. It goes towards your purchase price. So I have text messages. I can send you text messages of sellers being like, hey, I really need help for this, and that. And then I'll just Venmo them money. And they're like, you're my hero. That's credited towards me back at closing. Like I'm not sure. Thanks. You can't do that if you're just wholesaling houses. And so like, it just allows you to be way more seller centric and allows you to provide so many more solutions and sets you completely apart from everybody else. It's wild.
Dude, 100%. Oh man, I'm just thinking how many contracts have we missed in multiple buyer situations, right? Okay, somebody fills out a web form, PPC, lead, whatever, and they're meeting with 5 to 10 other wholesalers or buyers. And not one person is offering them cash up front like this that they can have this week when this person's likely already in financial distress. They can't make payments, and $500 or $1,000 at least puts food on the table for the next like 3 weeks. Holy crap.
They don't have to worry. You can pay their mortgage for them until you close. You can even give them $500 a week until you close. Like they're like, holy smokes. And it's all credited back to you at closing. Like you can't do that. It's crazy.
All right, man. Well, before we hop into because I do want to talk about the fundraising, if people are interested about installment method, what's the best way to reach out to you for that info?
The best way for the installment method is if you go to installmentmethod.com/freebies or freebie. There's a free like four video course on like Steve Trang teaching it to his team, me talking about it. I put in some extra freebies in there for that. So that will kind of get you like a good understanding and introduction to it. That like, sure, you can go out and try it yourself. All that stuff, that free course will help you to be able to go out and try it yourself if you want. And so like, that's where I would say to go.
Hell yeah. What's that website one more time?
Installmentmethod.com/freebie.
Boom.
Yep.
Guys, it's costing you a ton of money to not have that skill set because regulations are coming and more states are banning wholesaling.
Yo, I looked at it, and I think it was like 6 regulations came in the last 2 weeks from different states. 6 in the last 2 weeks. It just almost was like it happened in South Carolina, and then it just like swept across the country. I mean, Oregon, if you wholesale in Oregon, 364 days in jail and a $6,250 fine if they catch you wholesaling in Oregon. Yo, crazy.
Dude, that's insane.
That's crazy.
I mean, Oregon's got its own things going on, but just the fact that that's even a consideration is wild. It's wild.
That's crazy. 3/11/2024 is when they passed it.
That's insane. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about that because,
for real. Virginia.
man.
Let's talk about Oregon.
Dude, no kidding. So,
Yeah.
all right, so you got all these things going on. And obviously, when you're doing more of these installment method agreements, you are maximizing profit on every single deal. You've got steady foreclosures coming in. You need capital. So, talk to me a little bit about the progression of raising money from like family, friends, people that you know, to starting a fund. Like, what is that like?
Oh man, I will spend the rest of my life in funds. Oh, I geek out on funds. It's a lot of fun, man. Funds are insane. Now, funds are wild in that the richest. I read. I mean, there's statistics, and out of all the world's billionaires, 15% of them were made in some sort of like fund, wealth management. 15% in tech. Those are the 2 highest percentages, and then 5% in real estate. So then you're looking at 20%. If you're a fund real estate of the world's billionaires are all made in funds. And so there's one sense in which it's like one of the most lucrative thing you can do in the world, right? Like Ken Griffin, Citadel, he makes $800 million a year. Ray Dalio, 800 million. Ken Griffin makes like, I think it's like 120 million a month. I think he makes more than that. So like Ray Dalio makes 800 million a year. Like all these fund managers, so much money. It's crazy. And so just like one of the most lucrative things you could just do, period. And then, but also to be able to scale, I mean, really to be able to scale impact. I read a book called Whatever It Takes or What It Takes by Steve Schwartzman. And I just thought to myself, and he is the CEO and founder of Blackstone, not BlackRock, right? But Blackstone. And so the way that this guy has been able to impact the world and change the world through what he's done and his influence, absolutely phenomenal. And so really, when I started raising, actually what really got me into it was I started raising capital. I wanted to learn how to raise capital because of these foreclosures. And then I started going to capital raising. I started looking up like, oh, what's a capital raising course? Oh, capital raising mastermind. And then you get in there and everybody runs a fund. Everybody, all of them. And so then I was like, oh, and they run with like, so I joined Raise Masters, and Raise Masters is what's called a fund to fund model. And so I got in there and I was like, oh, everybody runs a fund? Okay, yeah. Then I'm just gonna start a fund. Okay. And like that's literally how it happened. I'm not even joking. I was like, oh, I just want to learn about raising more capital because we need to raise capital. And then I was like, oh, everybody has a fund. All right, I'm just gonna start a fund. And so then I just started it and learned a ton. I wrote my own PPM. My first PPM, I wrote it. For people who don't know, a PPM is a private placement memorandum, and it's a 100-page document, and it is insane. I wrote it with ChatGPT and a template. And it was pretty good. And then I ended up finding out about something called a customizable fund, which customizable funds are absolutely ridiculous. Like they're really, really cool because typically you need a PPM for each different asset that you have, which would be like if I want to start a multifamily, if I want to start a boutique hotel, if I want to do single family portfolio, I would need a PPM for each of those. I do this thing called a customizable fund from this company called Avestor. And what happens is there's one overarching PPM that talks about the thesis and the fund management and all that stuff. And then you log into the portal, and then my investors have the opportunity to invest and choose how they want to allocate their funds into the different asset classes we have. Each of those asset classes has its own deal disclosure, which is like a mini PPM. So then they sign that as well. So then really I could have private equity, multifamily, single family, all of that in one fund, which is wild. And so it's really cool. And then they give you 1K1 based off of all of those investments. It's wild. And so, but then I got into it like that. And it started because I needed to raise capital for I needed to raise capital for all of these fix and flips, but again, like, or these foreclosures and these fix and flips, but it got so cumbersome. So I would go with friends and family. But then really what I wanted to do, so this is very key. I wanted, first and foremost, so I literally met with an investor right before this one, a potential investor right before this. And one of the big things that I talk about is, listen, our fund, we're going to make you money on your money. That's the easy part. But what I want you to know is like your money is going to make an impact in the world. We are doing things like, so our fund, our documents say that we move money and we contribute to affordable housing in America. We have a BHAG of transforming the lives of 10,000 families in America by renting out 1,000 units of affordable housing in 10 major cities around America. And we also want to transform the foster care system in America. And so I tell people, I go, your money's going to make money, but your money's going to impact and change the lives of people all around America. And if that's something you're not interested in, like, I don't want you to invest with us. So really what happens is people are sure they're investing in us, but really they're investing in our why, and they're coming alongside us in our why and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that's more like captivating for them or more interesting for them. Now, I also am a very big proponent of Alex Hormozy's make offers so good that people feel stupid not doing them. And I tell them that. I go, listen, do you know who Alex Hormozy is? 90% of them say no. And I go, he's like the entrepreneur person, but he talks about making offers so good that if you can, you'd feel kind of crazy not to do it. Because our fund, we do, and I can't get into like super specifics because I'm a 506B, but our fund, like we're an equity fund and you could do profit splits, and that means you get to take tax depreciations. And we have also, I don't know, I don't know. I think I could tell you this, but like we have like, so then of course you have like different classes for how much people invest with us, but then we have another tier that's like really high. Yo, you're going to think I'm crazy. And the only reason I can do this is because of like the installment method or like Sub 2. If somebody invests a certain amount with us, Ryan, we will give them their returns and a rental property. Just straight up give it to them. Just put it in an LLC. You can have it. Because like,
whoa,
I know. Yes. So like we'll do that for them because I know that with the installment method, I get a house for like $8,000.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
So easy to do that like if they invest a certain amount with us, then like, yeah, we'll do that. That's pretty easy. Sure. And so that makes it very easy when you make two things. When you connect your capital raising to a why, to a bigger purpose that people want to feel a part of. We have 4 pillars. And I don't know how much time I have on your podcast, man, but I could keep going. But we have 4 pillars with our fund that we hang our hat on. There's growth, security, opportunity, and community. And so they're all 2 prongs where one impacts the community, like impacts the people we serve, and then the other impacts our investors. And so like when you give people a bigger why as to like what their money is doing, we talk about our core value being transparency. We give like P&Ls, balance sheet statements. Well, one, we're regulated by the SEC, so we got to do all that stuff anyways. But like we are hyper transparent with them. I do a lender's lab once a month where like I'll teach them, hey, let's go through all the economics of all the deals we got this month. And then let me actually teach you. The last one, I taught them sub 2s and how to do sub 2s if they wanted to go out and do that themselves and all that stuff. So like we just provide a crazy experience. I want to coin the term experiential investing for our investors. We provide this ridiculous experience that our investors just, I mean, we started in July and it's not a lot, but like, I've never raised capital before. And I had one private lender before we started in July. And we're at 2 million now. And I have to actually pause subscription because I'm like, hey, I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that I can still give you really good returns at this rate. And so then like, I know when I open subscription back up in like 2 to 3 months, we're probably going to hit like 5 million, like right away, because people are just like, can I get in? Can I get in? Can I get my money in before you get to the 2 million? Like,
damn,
they're like people I don't know are clawing to get into our fund. And so it's really cool. It's kind of crazy actually. But
dude, yeah, go ahead.
No, so I'm summing it up, but it's because we connected it to a much bigger why. And then we're making offers so good. People feel stupid not taking them.
Man, I love that. And the thing that I love about your story too is like all the shit that you've been through in your life. You are using it to your advantage,
Yeah.
telling people your story, being open about your struggles, being open about the failures. It makes you so much more relatable, so much more personable, so that when you are telling people about this fund, you're living this. Like, this isn't just something that you're saying. This is real. And the authenticity just screams out at people. So I'm not surprised at all that you're having rapid success with it. I think it's an incredible playbook. And if you're listening to this and going through hard times, like, it's unfortunate that, like, it's lopsided, like, and life isn't fair, but you can go through 40 years, 50 years of struggle, and then on the 51st year, everything culminates into this incredible opportunity. And that's when your preparation meets opportunity and creates that lucky break, right? It wasn't luck. It was 50 years of getting your teeth kicked in and going through the shit. And so, man,
that overnight success was a really long night.
Yeah, man.
50-year night.
That's my main message of, like, what and we're going to have you back for sure to dive deeper into some of this stuff. But
please, I'd love
that story, man, is just it's so powerful. And the fact that you're using it to have real meaningful impact. Before we end the show, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about what that vision is. And you alluded to affordable housing and everything. Let's talk about, like, the next decade. What does that look like?
Yeah. So my BHAG is for 2049. So very, like, dialed in on it. But so even just to go back really, really quickly. So the investor, and this is such a testament to what you just said. The investor I talked to today, an hour ago, well, an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. She asked me, she goes, so what do you guys do with the people that you help through foreclosure? Like, what happens after? And so then I told her, I go, look, we pay security deposits, first month's rents, we move them. And she was like, okay, good. Because if you didn't help them, I wouldn't want to invest with you. And so, like, we literally are attracting the people, like the same type of people that want to make impact in the world, because that's just what our other investors talk about and hear about and express and are excited about. And so, like, it has to be tied into your story, because, like, if you don't believe it to your core, then other people won't believe it, right? Like, they won't believe it and they won't believe in you. And so, yeah, I think that's good. So the next 10 years, so this is what's really interesting. So I would say the next 10 years, this is what's very interesting about funds, man. I talked to a fund accountant once, and I was like, hey, can you help us with our fund accounting? And they were huge. And they were like, okay, what do you do? And I was like, I told them this, and they're like, how much revenue? And they were like, oh, you don't want to hire us. We don't want to take all of your money. And they were like, we're for, like, you want to come back to us when you're on, like, fund 3 through 10. So funds are very crazy to where, like, everybody does more than one fund. So, like, this is our first fund. And then I know we're going to get into, like, a PE fund. And we're actually already going to start another fund because we're a 506B right now. And we love marketing and doing all that stuff. So we're going to move to a 506C, which, again, we probably need another episode to talk all about that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I love funds. Love it. So I'll talk all about that. But because people do multiple funds in their life, a ton of funds. And so I would say the next 10 years, I'll probably start some sort of PE fund. But ultimately, the goal is, as a whole, for us to transform the lives of 10,000 families in America by renting out 1,000 units of affordable housing across the country. Because, like, I want so badly what my mom worked so hard for me to be the opportunity for other people, for single mothers and people to be able to raise their kids in places that they wouldn't normally be able to raise them in, to have opportunities they wouldn't normally be able to have, or to be able to live in a house that or rent out an apartment or whatever that they're proud of actually walking in the doors of and being in. And so I want that so badly. And, like, who knows what the heck that's going to look like? You ready? What I think it really could look like is, like, sustainable communities, like smaller, sustainable. I actually, like, it's very crazy when you get into, like, this world and you hear people talking about what they're doing at massive scales. And I actually think, like, eco-friendly, sustainable communities that are, like, either tiny homes or, like, container homes, I think are going to be, like, really, really popular moving forward in really interesting spots where, like, they're not relying a whole lot on big cities around them, but they rely on each other within these smaller communities, and they have everything they need within a certain mile radiuses. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting play on being able to scale that up pretty substantially. And I don't know what the heck that looks like, because who the heck knows what technology, because like technology. So I read this like 3 years ago. Every year, technology is moving at a pace of 200 years of technological advancement. So like, imagine, right? So like we had this huge shift from the industrial revolution, from like whatever was before that. I don't know. I don't really know that too much, but like, but just imagine
whale blubber.
Yeah, exactly. Every year, every year the amount of change is the same amount from like 1824 to 2024, right? Like that's the amount of years of technological change that happens every year, and now that is just escalating a lot faster with artificial intelligence. So I can't imagine what that's going to look like in housing in the next 10 years. Like, what? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea. But the mission is going to stay the same. The medium and how you get there is going to change, and it's going to change at a rate and at a level that I have no idea and literally cannot comprehend right now. But the mission is the same. And honestly, oh my gosh, the mission will actually expand, because when you think about it, when we think about affordable housing, we think of lower income affordable housing. No, it's way easier for people with no money to get houses and people with money to get houses than it is for the middle class to get houses. In Charlotte, the average house is $460,000. You need a household income of $130,000 to afford a house $460,000. The average income in Charlotte is $60,000. That means affordable. The most unaffordability in housing is the middle class, hardworking American. And so that's where I think the biggest shift in technological advancement in housing is going to occur, is in the opportunity of the middle class that literally has nowhere to go and like can't afford housing in America at all, because there's stipends for no income people. Like there's stipends for all of that low income, and rich people don't have any problem buying houses, but the middle house is getting pushed into complete poverty, and it's crazy, or into complete unaffordability and homelessness, which is just crazy. So very interesting.
Yeah,
so I would say like the mission has to remain the same, but the medium on which we get there, and honestly, the people that we serve is probably going to be different in that time frame. Yeah,
I love it, man. How does your mom feel about given everything she's been through and
that's good, man.
This vision?
My mom is my hero. There's no doubt about it. My mom is my hero. What she sacrificed for me, and now it's really cool because like I'm building my house, and on my land I'm building my mom a house, and now it's like really cool to be able to build my mom a house with us, for her to never have to worry about. I'm excited for her to retire and just chillax and relax on the pond that we have on our land, and like not worry about anything. And I think she's proud. I think she's proud of me. Because what I also, so the thing that I care most about, so like, yes, I care about affordable housing. I really do. The thing I care the most about is foster care. So my wife and I, we foster children. We've had children in and out of our house. We've adopted 3 out of foster care. We're having our first right now, pregnant with our first. So we're going to have 4. But we're never going to stop fostering. And so like, there is a deep systemic issue, and like, oh man, it is the most broken system, the foster care system. But like, it's not the parents' fault. I feel bad for my kids' parents. My kids' parents love my kids. They love them.
Yeah.
But they aren't in healthy places, and they are caught in this vicious cycle. But and it's a systemic issue that they'll never get out of. I strongly believe they'll never get out of it, not because they don't want to, because they're just not able to, because the system doesn't work in their favor. And so like, honestly, when we really get down to the core of it, it's not a money issue. I think it's a mental health issue that needs to be addressed. And so like, there's so many ways that honestly, like, I'm so serious that I don't think I could ever make a change in that world unless I had some sort of substantial influence. Mailing a senator doesn't do anything. I have to have some sort of influence that when I walk in a room, they go, whoa, that's Devin at PF Capital. You know, then I have some sort of influence to be able to affect those issues. And that's the mission, right? That's 2049 and beyond for me. And so the mission remains the same. The medium can change, whatever. But if the mission remains the same, then like, we'll get there. So that's kind of where I am.
Absolutely love it. Devin Robinson, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have you back, man. If people want to invest with you in your fund, where can they find out more?
So if they want to, they'd have to reach out to me because they cannot invest in my fund without me knowing them. So we'd have to create some sort of relationship right now. That won't be the case in the future. Reach out to me. One of the main ways that I do this, I go live a lot in my Facebook group. If they go to realliferei.com, just go in that Facebook group. I'd love to get to know you. Or hit me up on Instagram, devin.robinson1. I'm so happy to engage and chat with everybody that reaches out to me. And I'm super thankful for everybody that does. So feel free. I think I have something about my fund on devinrobinsonrei.com. I think there might be something there, so they could go there as well.
Okay. Awesome. Dude, I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing your story. And I
think like more people
No, go for it.
That listen to this like are in those positions. Like I think too many times entrepreneurship, real estate investing is romanticized by people that are just hiding behind these podcasts when like lives are in shambles, right? Like lives really are in shambles. And so like I think people need to hear a lot of this stuff that like Ryan, I'll tell you straight up, the last 3 years have been so hard in my life where like I've built such a foundation and paid my people that my wife has been like, I used to play video games professionally. And I got to a point where my wife was like, just go back and play video games so we can afford to live, right? But now like, I'm thankful the Lord has like brought me through that. But I also believe so strongly, my convictions are so strong in what I'm doing that I'm like, this is it. This is it. So like I've withstood that. And this is the last thing I'll say. I like the podcast Diary of a CEO, and he's interviewed a ton of billionaires.
Yeah.
And they said, what's the one strain that you see in all billionaires, that one consistent strain throughout all billionaires that you've seen? And he says, they don't quit. They never quit. And so for me, it's like, I believe so strongly in what I've done. I'm not quitting. And I think that that's what gets people to that next level of success is like, if you believe and you have such strong convictions about what you're doing, like don't quit, don't give up, and find that thing that you believe that strongly in and don't quit.
Amen to that. I'll just add one of my favorite Hormozyisms to that, which is it's really hard to beat somebody that's playing an infinite game. Right? If somebody never quits, man, they're going to be tough to beat. So
that's right, man.
I love it, bro.
I love this. You're fantastic, bro. I appreciate you.
All right, Devin. Thanks for coming on. Peace.
Thank you.